Okay, hello and welcome to the Sam Beast YouTube channel and today's webinar where we'll be discussing hardware asset management technologies. My name is David Foxen, and as always before we start, please do not forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We have got a whole host of IT asset management, hardware asset management, software asset management, software licensing, cloud and FinOps videos that you can watch, and loads of webinars as well. And we're aiming to do at least one webinar a month in 2025. So this is this month's webinar. One of my most favorite topics is talking about the hardware asset management technologies. We're talking about things like the AMDB, where it lives, inventory sources, that kind of thing. So without further ado, let's dig straight into it. And first of all, let's discuss what an AMDB is, an asset management database. So this is the central repository containing all of your physical and virtual IT assets, what you have defined as an IT asset. Remember, the scope for your IT asset management function is wildly varies depending on your organization. And this is the ITAM HAM team's global central source of truth. This should be your golden record, your golden database that you trust with your life, and that you trust to make informed decisions and support senior management with your hardware asset management function. So the AMDB does not focus on the configuration item or service criticality like the configuration management database, aka the CMDB. We'll explain more about the differences between the AMDB and the CMDB later on in this webinar. It contains all the information that you need regarding the physical asset, including financial, contractual, warranty, retirement, disposal, ITAD data, everything that you need to proactively manage that asset throughout its life cycle with you. Used for reporting, including tracking your inventory coverage percentage. We actually have a mini webinar coming up on inventory coverage percentage, how to determine what your AMDB inventory coverage percentage is, what the different data sources you should be looking at, etc. But that's a really important one when talking about your asset management database and hardware asset management technologies. And obviously, if required, it can be connected to other inventory sources for automated updates and the inventory data gathering. So obviously, a lot of AMDBs are built in, which we'll explain in a second, to service management tools, for example, which have their own discovery methods, but you can also use things like SCCM, Intune, JMF or JAMF. There's a whole host of things out there, Landsweeper. There's loads of other discovery sources that you can use via APIs to update your asset management database for that completeness of data and as close to 100% inventory coverage as you can. We do collaborate though with the CMDB. So whilst we have a different focus within the AMDB, we do collaborate with the CMDB to share data, to enrich data, to update data throughout the whole of the asset's life cycle to make sure that we're getting all the information that we need to make informed decisions and manage that asset effectively and optimally throughout its life cycle with our organization. So let's have a look at some of the potential locations then for your asset management database. Spoiler alert, the first one is your service management or your ITSM tool. This could be something like ServiceNow, which has a big focus on the asset management database. And this is a pre-existing solution that may have an additional module that you can manage all of your hardware fleet within it. You can also look at your IT asset management tool. ITAM tools have evolved a lot to look from looking at software licensing and usage and compliance through to the hardware side of things as well. So you could potentially have your asset management database in your IT asset management tool of choice. Asset tagging technology is not one of my preferred options, but there are some asset tagging technologies that allow you to build up a lot of that information as well with the procurement data, the end of life information. Not quite as proactive and forthcoming as an ITAM or ITSM technology, but if you have no other options, an asset tagging technology is definitely something to consider. And of course, the most used ITAM tool in the world, Excel. And even to this day, I see AMDBs being managed and populated in Excel. Obviously, not the right solution. It's never accurate because things are moving so frequently. You're not getting any updated inventory information. It's all manual. This is open to user error as well, duplication, things like that. So not my most favorite option, but it is there, and you can use this with things like Power BI dashboards to create dashboards and make it look fancy and nice and easily accessible. But If you've got no other option, I'd rather you have an AMDB in Excel than have no AMDB at all. Ideally, your asset management database should reside in the same technology tool as your configuration management database. So therefore, the optimal option would be to have it in your service management tool, something like ServiceNow, where it's got the CI and the asset information in there, so that they can talk to each other and they can share data, and you can manage the life cycle all within one place. But yeah, lots of options for you. It depends on what your organization is like, what your existing options and technologies that you have are. But if worse comes to worse, Excel is always the go-to and is the most used ITAM tool on the market, bar none. So let's have a look then at your asset management database responsibilities, your AMDB responsibilities. So, and I highly recommend that when I build this slide out, that you take a screen grab so that you can really take this away and understand what the AMDB should be used for. So data accuracy and updates. So the IT asset type owners, have a look at one of our previous webinars where we're explaining what IT asset type owners are. But these are typically your specialists. So your network team would be an IT asset type owner for switches, routers, firewalls, etc. Your infrastructure teams for servers, racking, and all of that kind of stuff. And your end user teams for your end user devices such as laptops, desktops, monitors, phones, tablets. So your IT asset type owners are responsible for the day-to-day management and upkeep of the AMDB data for their asset type. IT asset type owners are also responsible for ensuring any integrations with external data sources relating to their IT asset types are working. IT asset types owners are responsible for reporting any data risks within the AMDB to the IT asset management team. And IT asset type owners are responsible for mitigating any missing data identified as part of the ITAM governance controls of the AMDB. Very important, ITAM cannot do it all on its own. It needs the support of the IT asset type owners to populate and maintain a really quality, accurate asset management database. So in terms of the overall controls and governance as well, this is where we're looking at what IT asset management is responsible for, and that's ensuring the overall controls and processes related to the AMDB that are being followed. Your AMDB is going to have a set of processes and sub-processes behind it to make sure that it's being populated and used correctly. ITAM responsible for setting the controls that will be followed, including the scope, data sets that are being governed, and the technologies that are being used to populate and maintain the AMDB. And ITAM are responsible for logging any AMDB related data risks and ensuring they are mitigated. Ultimately, IT asset management has the overall responsibility of the AMDB, but the IT asset type owners have accountability for making sure their data sets and their assets are coming in correctly. Feel free to take a screen grab of this one and you can use it internally with your IT asset type owners to show the difference and what your expectations are of your IT asset type owners when it comes to updating your AMDB and your hardware asset management technologies. Key AMDB data sets that are required. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these again. Please feel free to take a screen grab so that you can take this back into your organization and you can ensure that you're getting all of the relevant information for the asset types. A lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of it overlaps as well in terms of, there's data sets that you need for all of them, such as serial number, which would be a unique identifier, location, state, substate. You'll need asset type owners, assigned users, models, makes, all of the procurement information for these assets, and all of the end of life information when it reaches that point. But a lot of these will have a lot of the AHAM technologies and your AMDBs that are housed in an ITSM tool, for example, will have a lot of these data sets already in there by default. It's just up to you and your IT asset type owners to make sure that you are populating that effectively. Some key ones in there that are often overlooked include things like depreciation values, very important for all of your asset types, depreciation start dates, depreciation end dates, stock rooms when assets are in stock so that you know exactly where they are and what the substate of that would be, whether it's pending disposal, whether it's being repaired, whether it's being replaced, whether it's a loan or whether it's good to go. And yet on the more infrastructure data center side of things, physical locations, what rack they're in, where they are, that kind of thing. So having all of this information will be unbelievably useful to you when you're managing your hardware assets within your asset management database. There's also some additional ones in there for the infrastructure stuff like kilowatts per hour, energy efficiency ratings, etc. These are also very useful for monitors so that you understand the environmental impacts, the energy being consumed by those, and whether there's actually an opportunity there for you to get a better model that's more energy efficient that ultimately will save you money on your electricity costs. Further examples on how IT asset management, hardware asset management can add additional value to an organization, things that you won't even think of, but you can add additional value to. Looking at energy costs. Who knew? Well, we did because we work in ITAM, but yeah, highly recommend that you start looking at adding this information in because you can report on that, work with your ITAD provider as well to see how much trees you're saving, cars off the road you're saving through ITAD, but you can also do that when looking at your physical assets that are consuming energy within your organization. So take a screen grab of this. If I've missed anything, of course, please do let me know. There are additional data sets that you can also add in that might be for specific niche assets. But on the whole, this is the base information that you'll need within your AMDB for hardware asset management and lifecycle management. So we mentioned we've got a webinar coming up about inventory sources and populating your inventory coverage percentage, but these are typical inventory sources that can populate your asset management database. You've got the likes of your SCCM, Intune, Active Directory, and Jamf. Jamf is for your MacBooks and sometimes your iOS devices. It is very, very good in that environment. Highly recommended if you've got a lot of Macs within your estate. That can all feed into the asset management database using APIs. You've got your cloud platforms that can come into the AMDB, your network asset database technologies. There are some dedicated network asset management tools out there which are really useful and will populate a lot more information than your typical AMDB will. Get that information into the AMDB, get your SAM technologies into the AMDB, get your asset tagging technologies in there, data center technologies, your mobile device management technologies, which may already be included in Intune, for example, or Jamf if you're using Apple devices, and your information security technologies as well. They can all add data, they can all enrich your AMDB to make it even better and that global central source of truth for your hardware assets. It might be important here to mention that you can set the parameters for what these different tools are updating, whether they create assets, whether they just update certain values within them. You don't want things overwriting and duplicating, etc. So it's really important that you make sure that your AMDB is not being duplicated when you have all of these different inventory sources coming in, that you just want them to enrich certain data fields, and you can set that up when you configure your APIs. You may say that if you cannot find the serial number in the AMDB, any one of these sources can create the asset, but put it into a staging area first so that your ITAM team can go through the list and validate that, yes, this is not in the AMDB, this is not in the CMDB. We need to approve that so that it can go into production and start being populated and come in. But yeah, really, really useful sets of inventory sources that will just enrich the asset management database and the configuration management database and make ITAM's life a whole lot better and have ITAM with so much data and information that you can proactively manage your hardware assets a lot better. Feel free to take a screen grab on all of these ones, another really important one, and you may have additional inventory sources that you want to populate into your asset management database. Now, remember, your AMDB is your global source for ITAM for all of your hardware asset information. Ensure your AMDB has been set up with that daily scanning and the required data fields for hardware asset management. Anything missing, requests they are added as custom fields. We mentioned there that some tools may not have like the rack location, energy efficiency rating, etc. You can create custom fields to populate that information. Where possible, other inventory technologies are needed to integrate into the AMDB to perform automatic updates. You can also expand this out to your procurement tools, your HR tools, your Workday, etc., so that it can populate user information, procurement information. That would be amazing. Ensure you assigned the roles and responsibilities as to who updates the AMDB daily. Is it ITAM or is it IT asset type owners? Make sure you have those roles assigned. clearly identified, clearly documented, clearly communicated and educated so that the AMDB doesn't get neglected because ITAM are pointing at the IT asset type owners and the IT asset type owners are pointing at ITAM. Make sure you've got that defined and clearly scoped. And run monthly governance controls. I've called them governance controls, they're audits. Run monthly governance controls to ensure your AMDB is accurate and that there are no missing data sets. Very important. You might get loads of new assets come in every month. You might only get a few, but they may be missing a depreciation value. They may be missing a cost. They may be missing a substate. They may be missing a depreciation value, aka it's going to be SL 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, etc. So make sure you're running those monthly controls to identify any missing data gaps and get those data gaps filled in as soon as possible. So let's have a look then at the asset management database versus the configuration management database. The AMDB focuses on that hardware lifecycle management data, the financial value of assets, user ownership, data for ham optimization, and IT asset type ownership. Whereas the CMDB has more of a focus on relationships between technologies, technology dependencies, technology configuration, service criticality, and overall ITIL support such as change, release, patching, etc. As you can see, there's two different focus areas. They do work together a lot. However, some assets may not be CIs and some CIs may not be assets. Like, for example, locations might be a configuration item, not an asset. And yeah, so it's really important to make sure you've got that differential between the two, that you understand who's managing the CIs and the CMDB element of it, and who's managing the asset management database and the asset side of things. You need to make sure they're talking to each other where you want them to talk. Not everything needs to switch from a CI to an asset and an asset to a CI. You need to define those parameters to make sure that things like serial number are coming across, assigned user, last logged in user, location, most recent discovery date, updated by inventory sources, things like that. There are key bits of information that work for both, and then there's information that needs to be kept separate for the asset in the CI. So make sure you map that out, document it, communicate that out to everyone that needs to be communicated to, so that you're clear on what the CI and the CMDB is for your organization and what the asset and the AMDB is for your or ITAM function and what the ITAM team will be managing. You may be in a role where you're actually IT asset management and configuration management, and therefore you care about both. If you're just focusing on ITAM and you've got a configuration management team, then yeah, have that conversation, get aligned, get on the same page, and make sure you're not duplicating any data updates or data sets, and that there's only enrichment updating for certain things that you want them to update. Very important. You do not want to screw over your AMDB or your CMDB because you haven't defined those parameters and you're creating duplicate CIs, duplicate assets, etc. So we've mentioned about data sharing then. It's obviously the CMDB and CIs updated via discovery sources. Specific AMDB data fields are then enriched, keyword enriched, based on the CMDB data, not overwritten, not created, etc., etc. Although sometimes I've seen organizations where they actually have the CI created first and then the CI creates the asset, or the asset starts first and then creates the CI. Typically, if you've got your IT asset management processes nailed and matured and in place, you're going to be adding in the asset before the CI, because when you get that serial number report from your reseller or your hardware vendor, you're going to be adding that into your AMDB, set as in transit, and then you can set that creates the CI. Other organizations like to have the CI created once it's hit the network and been discovered. Totally up to you. But yeah, specific data fields enriched based on CMDB data, and then the rest of the AMDB data is typically updated via other inventory sources and the APIs. Typically, organizations already have data sources updating or enriching the CMDB due to ITIL requirements, so that's already in place. Check within your organization what's already been updated and enriched. Both the CMDB and AMDB are usually in the same technology, as we've already mentioned before, so you can push data from the CMDB to your AMDB and your AMDB to your CMDB, thus sharing of the data. We're all friends here. Not all like we've said, not all CMDB data fields are required within the AMDB. So set that scope before you make any of those integrations. We've already mentioned that before, but very important to set that scope before you're creating any APIs, integrations, or having technologies talk to each other. CMDB exclusions. Certain IT asset types do not need to be included in the CMDB. They do not have CIs. For example, examples only, this is just based on experience and what other clients have requested. This includes mobile phones, tablets, monitors, headsets, and other consumables. However, you may define that actually you do want monitors to create a CI so that you can track break fix, or if there's a power outage on it, or I don't know, something like that. You may want any of those that I've mentioned to be a CI. And of course, that is absolutely fine. It's based on what your organization requirements are and what your specifications are. Some ham data within AMDB isn't required in the CMDB, such as depreciated value. CIs don't care. Assigned to the approved user. CI doesn't care. Procurement information. CI doesn't care. Custom fields that you've created specifically for hardware asset management. CI typically doesn't care. The reason for this is you've got all of that information on the asset already. You do not need all of that procurement, financial, ITAD, for example, information on there. You're approved versus your assigned user. That's purely a ham audit metric so that you can see that who you've given out the device to is with who actually has the device, that people aren't swapping laptops without following the correct process, swapping phones, tablets, etc. CI doesn't really care about that. CI typically will show you the assigned to user and the last logged in user. So yeah, very important that there's certain bits of data that you don't need on the CI. And the data between the AMDB and CMDB should be replicated other than the exclusions. Ensure you have the processes and controls in place to audit the data sources and any discrepancies. Like we mentioned about the monthly AMDB audits, it's also really useful to have a monthly AMDB v CMDB audit and also AMDB v inventory sources. But we'll cover that one when we do our webinar on the inventory coverage percentage, which is actually the next in our series of webinars. So make sure that you subscribe for that so you don't miss that one out. Again, another favorite of mine is tracking your inventory coverage percentage, and we'll go through all of that in the next one. But yeah, make sure you're doing those audits to make sure that the AMDB and CMDB is doing what you're expecting it to do. Do this on a monthly basis. Make sure that the CI is being automatically updated as well. If not, you may have problems with your inventory sources or even agents on your machine. So yeah, very important you've got those controls in place to track those audits. Now remember, the CMDB focuses on the configuration elements of your hardware assets. The AMDB focuses on the lifecycle management and day-to-day hardware asset management. You should be sharing data between your CMDB and AMDB for specific data sets. You need to be defining what AMDB data you wish to replicate to the configuration item as part of your wider ITSM requirements. And both databases are vital to hardware asset management and ITAM. They need to be maintained, they need to be updated to ensure they are accurate, and that the AMDB and CMDB remains your central source of truth for your hardware assets. So a very high-level overview on the ham technologies, what it's required for, and the different data sets and processing stuff that you need. Please feel free to go back and screen grab some of those slides that are really important, looking at the relationship between the IT asset type owner and ITAM, the different basic data sets that you need for the different IT asset types. And as we mentioned, our next mini webinar is looking at your inventory coverage, how you define the percentage of that, what you need to be checking, what you need to be auditing, the different data sources that are coming in, etc., and how you can identify what's in one data set and not in another, how you can fix that, etc., etc. Once we've done that, we have a building your hardware refresh plan webinar, another mini webinar all about hardware asset tagging. Is it still relevant in 2025? Spoiler alert, yes. The different technologies that you can use for asset tagging, the different asset tag types, QR codes, barcodes, RFID, etc. And then our final two in our hardware asset management series in 2025, we're looking at ham and green IT and sustainability and what hardware asset maturity actually is. And yeah, we'll go through that and explain how to configure your own ham maturity assessment using our new self-assessment platform in the licenseware tool that we've worked really hard on from a hardware asset management perspective. So to ensure you do not miss out on any of those, please make sure that you subscribe to the Sam Beast Consulting YouTube channel. Give this video a like if you have found it useful. Give it a like anyway. Even if you didn't find it useful, it really helps the channel grow. And until next time, happy ITAMing, happy ham technologying and AMDB updating. See you next time.